Okay, so there's this huge shift happening right under our noses in corporate America. It's a risk that's been hiding in plain sight for, decades. And now, all of a sudden, the biggest companies on the planet are being forced to talk about it. Let's dig in and find out what's really going on. So it all comes down to this one question, right? What are these absolute giants of industry? We're talking energy, logistics, you name it. What are they suddenly being forced to put down in writing for everyone to see? The answer? Well, it reveals a vulnerability that's way bigger than just stolen passwords.
And wow, this slide just lays it all out. Before this year, if you dug through the financial filings of a huge company, you'd find pretty much zip about the digital risks to their actual physical stuff. But now, in 2024, this new phrase is popping up everywhere: operational technology. And trust me, this isn't just new corporate speak. It's basically a forced confession.
So let's do just that. Let's unpack this new corporate confession. We're going to look at the exact words these companies are now using and figure out what it means for their bottom line, and maybe more importantly, what it means for us. Here's the absolute bottom line. For the first time ever, in legally binding documents, these companies are admitting that the tech that controls their physical world, their factories, their power plants, their shipping networks, is a massive cybersecurity risk. This is a huge shift from just worrying about data to worrying about things in the real world breaking. To really get what's happening, we have to understand that key term, operational technology, or just OT. You can think of it like the invisible nervous system that runs our entire modern world, and it's suddenly front and center.
Yeah, I know. The official definition sounds a little dry, but just zero in on that last part: control of physical devices. This is the technology that actually touches the real world. It's the code that opens a valve, spins a turbine, or moves a giant robot arm on an assembly line.
Now, this is probably the best way you think about it. We all know IT, right? Information technology. That's like a company's brain. It's handling data, emails, all the financial stuff. If it fails, you get a data breach. But OT, operational technology, that's the company's nervous system. It controls the muscles, the physical stuff. And if OT fails, a factory grinds to a halt. The lights go out. A supply chain just stops. The consequence isn't a data leak. It's a real-world, physical breakdown.
So you're probably asking yourself, why now? Why are all these companies suddenly being so honest about this? Well, the answer isn't some newfound sense of corporate responsibility. It's a new rule from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC.
And here it is. This is the legal hammer that dropped. A new SEC rule, Item 106, now says companies have to disclose any cybersecurity risk they think is material, which is really just Wall Street talk for important enough to scare an investor. And, as we're seeing, OT risk just made that list in a big way.
Okay, so what does this new honesty actually look like in practice? Let's go ahead and peek inside the actual 10K financial reports from this year and see exactly what these companies are admitting, many for the very first time. And the patterns are pretty wild.
The first big theme we see, and it's a huge one, is this idea of materiality. Companies are now flat out saying that a cyber attack on their operational tech could bring their entire money-making operation to a screeching halt. It's not some far-off problem anymore. It's a direct threat to their business.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Look at this, a direct quote from the energy giant Chevron. They say, in black and white, that an attack on their OT networks could have a material adverse impact. That's the most corporate way of saying, this could cost us an unbelievable amount of money by stopping us from actually getting oil and gas out of the ground.
All right, this next theme is something called legacy risk, and this is where it starts to get a little scary. Companies are admitting that a lot of the industrial gear running our world is, well, it's old. And unlike your phone or your laptop, you can't always just patch it or update it.
Just listen to how unbelievably blunt this is from FedEx. They say that for some of their systems, patches for certain vulnerabilities may not exist. Just let that sink in for a second. They're telling investors that there are security holes in their physical logistics network that might be permanent. They just have to live with it.
The third major theme is this massive collision of two worlds that, for the longest time, were kept completely separate: the corporate data network, IT, and the factory floor network, OT. Connecting them is great for efficiency, but wow, does it open up a whole new can of worms when it comes to risk.
And look at what Caterpillar, the company that literally builds the machines that build our world, has to say. Their cybersecurity program now has to cover 3 totally different things: their corporate IT, their factory OT, and even the tractors and bulldozers they sell to customers. The number of ways things can go wrong has just exploded.
So let's just pull all this together for a second. First, OT risk is material. It can stop the money from flowing, just like Chevron said. Second, there's legacy risk. These old systems that, as FedEx admits, might just be permanently vulnerable. Third, this convergence of IT and OT has created a massive new headache for companies like Exxon and Caterpillar. And you know this is a real shift when companies like Baker Hughes are creating entirely new jobs like OT cybersecurity manager just to handle this one specific problem.
All right, I get it. This all sounds like boring corporate stuff, right? SEC rules, 10K filings, but why should you actually care about any of this? How does it connect from a boardroom to, your actual life?
Well, because that operational technology runs everything. It's the invisible force behind the power grid that keeps your lights on, the shipping networks that bring packages to your door, the factories that make, well, all your stuff, and even the systems that make sure your water is safe to drink. These new disclosures are basically an admission that all of these things we depend on are vulnerable.
And let's be super clear about what's at stake here. A failure in OT isn't about someone stealing your credit card number. It's about things with real physical impact. We're talking about the potential to stop a train, shut down a city's power, or something even worse. This is the risk these companies are now finally being forced to talk about.
And just remember the scale here. This isn't some niche problem at a couple of small factories. This is happening across the Fortune 1000, the biggest, most critical companies that are the backbone of our entire economy.
So, if you take one thing away from all this, it should be this. The era of thinking that the digital world and the physical world were separate, it's officially over. That wall between them has been breached, and these SEC filings are pretty much the public announcement.
And that really leaves us with one final huge question. For years and years, this risk was a quiet conversation happening behind closed doors. Now, it's out in the open for everyone to see. So now that we all know just how vulnerable our physical world really is, how is that going to change the world we all depend on every single day?